Imagine you've been in prison for several weeks. Every day is much like the last, except this morning, one of the guards called your name. You line up with the other prisoners whose names were called. The man next to you is an aristocrat. He lived a life of excess while the poor starved and shivered. The woman on your other side is a seamstress. She claims that another seamstress denounced her as a royalist because that woman wanted her job. You aren't certain why you've been imprisoned. At your hasty trial, the tribunal declared you an enemy of the republic, even though there wasn't any evidence given. Did a neighbor denounce you? Were you mistaken for one of the aristocrats? No matter, it's too late. Your name has been called. Your hair is shorn, you're loaded into a tumbril, and you're pulled through the streets of Paris. The people you pass hurl insults at you and they throw rotten fruit. And then you arrive in the Place de la Révolution. The square is so crowded that people can hardly move, and in the center is an enormous machine with a sharp blade glinting off the morning sun. The blade drops and the crowd roars. The executioner lifts the severed head to show the crowd. Soon, that will be you. Hi, I'm Shayna Galen. I'm the author of over 50 historical romances. I've written a 4-book series featuring the fictional unsung heroines of the League of the Scarlet Pimpernel. It's called The Scarlet Chronicles, and in this video series, I'm taking you on a deep dive into the research I did for the series. This is part 6 of everything you didn't know that you really wanted to know about the French Revolution. Today's topic, the guillotine. When you're looking for ways to make mass slaughter quicker and more humane, the guillotine seems like the way to go. The guillotine was actually invented before the Revolution by a French doctor, Antoine Louis, but it was Dr. Guillotine who suggested it be used as a more humane method of execution, and then the device was named after him. He was not at all pleased by this, but despite his protests, the name stuck. It was given lots of other pet names like the National Razor, Madame la Guillotine, and the Widow. During the French Revolution, executions were spectator sports. Good patriots would go to the Place de la Révolution every day to see the executions. And you didn't have to leave if you got hungry. You could eat lunch at a restaurant called Cabaret de la Guillotine. Souvenirs, as well as programs that listed the victims for the day, were for sale. And miniature, but fully functional guillotines became children's toys. Kids would use them to chop the heads off of dolls or mice. People even bought small ones for their tables to chop up vegetables. But as time went on, people began to question whether the guillotine was really as humane as everyone thought. First of all, there was the agony that the prisoners went through. Usually their names were announced at roll call in prison the morning of their death. Then their hair was cut, and then they were loaded into carts called tumbrils. They were paraded through the streets while passerbys threw vegetables and yelled insults at them. Then they were unloaded and marched up the steps of the scaffold, made to lay on their front, put their head through a hole, and they had their heads cut off. But if you were in that last tumbril, you would have had a lot of time to think about what was coming. Fortunately, the death was quick and painless. Or was it? I'm not so sure. During the Revolution, spectators remarked that the heads held up for display to the crowd still had the ability to make expressions like blinking their eyes or looking around. Charlotte Corday, who was guillotined for killing the revolutionary leader Jean-Paul Marat, had her head slapped after decapitation by the executioner. The crowd widely reported that her face expressed indignation. Then, in 1905, a doctor experimented on the head of a condemned prisoner named Languille. He called the prisoner's name after decapitation, and the prisoner was able to focus his eyes on the doctor for several seconds after decapitation. It's now widely believed that people retain consciousness for 5 to 7 seconds after decapitation. That's a long time to still be alive after death. Another study that I read had a doctor who shoved his finger in the severed spinal column of a decapitated head, and the person reacted with a grimace of pain. So there is reason to believe that death by the guillotine is not as quick or as painless as we first believed. And if all of this isn't gruesome enough, let's talk about Madame Tussaud. You may have heard of her because of all those famous wax museums all over the world. Well, before the Revolution, she was also known for her amazing ability to fashion people's likeness in wax. She and her stepfather ran the Salon des Cires, which featured tableaus of people who were famous or in the news of that time. Once the revolution began, Madame Tussaud, who was Madame Grosholt at the time, was brought the severed heads of well-known nobles like the king and the queen and asked to make wax replicas of them. She didn't enjoy doing this, but she really had no choice. Later, she was imprisoned, and that's where she met Monsieur Tussaud, whom she married. And the rest is history. Join me for part 7 of everything you didn't know that you really wanted to know about the French Revolution for the beginning of important people during the French Revolution.